elapsing. For example, a second. So a pendulum might have kept the second hand on a clock moving accurately. Okay? So all of his work studying pendulums and whatnot helps inform those sorts of technologies. Alright. Are there any questions on our three astronomers that I put on there? Copernicus, Kepler, or Galileo?
Is there a scientific reaction?
To Kepler? Here again, Galileo sort of takes a look at some of his works, is able to verify some of them through his observation with the telescope. Okay? Galileo obviously has a severe church reaction in the form of his being position and whatnot. Scientifically, Galileo and his work is useful to Newton, who we'll talk about in a little while. Because Newton talks about gravity, Galileo talks about gravity, and so on and so forth. So let's talk about quickly Descartes. And this is the guy I forgot that you need to squeeze into your chart somewhere. Francis Bacon. Okay, just like that, the food, bacon, B-A-C-O-N. All right. So, first, I guess we'll talk about Bacon first. So real quick, Francis Bacon is a thinker. All right, he's English born, and he decides that the truth, how do they phrase it? So the truth can only be derived from a thorough investigation of evidence. Right? So the only way to know if something is true is to study it. Study the evidence for that argument. Okay? Decide whether or not that evidence holds up to a hypothesis. What is this starting to sound like? Yes, the scientific method. So Bacon is really the first person to come up with a definitive method for completing science. All right? So he comes up with the scientific method. You have to have a problem. You have to have a hypothesis. You have to have a way to test that hypothesis. Okay? Once you've collected all of your data, you have to be able to interpret that to determine if your hypothesis was right or wrong. Okay, you all should be familiar with this, I would hope, from every middle school science course ever. Right? Good. So, you all are familiar with the scientific method. So Francis Bacon is the guy who came along and said, you know, maybe we should start applying such a method to our data gathering techniques so we can know if things are really true or not. All right? So he was interested in the pursuit of truth. Okay. So, for most of the rest of these guys, there's not really much to put in the column of church reaction. But obviously, scientific reaction, what does Bacon's new method do for the rest of science?
Yeah? What is it?
What does Bacon's new method do? Yes?
Help develop a scientific method.
Well, yeah, it helps develop the scientific method, and who can that be used by?
All scientists.
All scientists ever, after, right? So we still use the scientific method today, okay, so that's clearly a reaction. This is something that we hold to be valuable, right? Hmm? That's the scientific reaction, right? So it's something that we still do today, so clearly we feel, or scientists anyway today, feel that the scientific method is still valuable in conducting experiments. It's the only way to figure out the truth of a hypothesis through your observation and through your data collection. Okay? So, the next guy on the list then, Descartes, is another thinker. Okay, he's French. He's a French thinker. Alright, he has a slightly different attitude towards finding out truth. So Bacon says truth can only be determined through this analysis of evidence. Descartes turns around and he says, well, I think that truth can be determined through reason alone. Alright, so in his attempt to prove whether or not truth can be determined through reason, he breaks everything down back to one single tenet. And that is, I think, therefore I am. Right? He says, I know nothing to be true in this world, except for the fact that I exist because I am thinking. Alright? So, because he is thinking, he exists. That's the only thing he can know for certain, until he starts to apply these ideas of reason to the rest of his life. Okay, so after he says, okay, I've established that I exist, now what else exists? He has to work through these arguments with reason in order to determine that, for example, all of you would exist, and I would exist, and the desks in this room would exist. Okay? So he has to apply these new reason arguments to discover whether or not all of that exists. And so on and so forth. He goes from there. So his idea is that truth can come only through reason. Bacon says truth can come through the observable, through things that we can observe, things that we can measure. Okay? So that is the difference there. How are you guys doing on the charts? Still following along okay? Sorry. Yeah, you can fill in bacon wherever you can. You put low reason, or you put bacon down. That's Descartes. I think, therefore I am. I know that I'm certain that nothing exists except the fact that you think. That's Descartes. Any other questions so far? Alright, so we got our astronomers out of the way. We now have most of our philosophers out of the way. Who's next on our list? Oh, I skipped Newton. I was going to go straight to the Thales. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's talk about physics then. Alright, Isaac Newton. What do we know about him? He's a physicist. Good. What else? He studies gravity. Very good. Okay, that may be one of the things he is most known for. Alright, so Newton takes a look at gravity. He determines a universal theory of gravitation that still holds true today, except in quantum physics, I believe. Alright, so he has this universal theory of gravitation. What else does he come up with and definitively prove? This is something that you probably covered first thing in science class. Okay, Newton's laws of motion, right? There's 3 of them.